Okay, this is chapter 3, marriage savior for the husbands. He is the savior of his body, the church, Ephesians 5:23. The first part of Ephesians 5:23 compares the husband to Christ. For a husband is the head of his wife as Christ is head of the church. But the rest of this verse says that Christ is the savior of his body, the church. By way of comparison, the verse is saying the husband is the savior of his wife. Remember, God made the husband and wife one, so as the husband saves his wife, he in essence saves his own body. This verse reveals this. Now, I don't know the kind of wife that you have, but I can assure you of this. She is not a worse person than those for whom the Savior came to save. This includes you, who were once far away from God. You were his enemies, separated from him by your evil thoughts and actions. So if he can save somebody like that, your wife, no matter how bad she is not as bad as you and I were before we got saved. This is the analogy that this verse is setting up. So cheer up, men. Even if you feel your wife is your enemy or even evil, no problem. God knows how to save someone like that. He saved you and me. He has saved the very worst in the world. And now God has given to the husband this same secret, this SSL secret power, to save his wife and to save her for himself. Do you want your wife to view you as her head? Again, no problem. No one viewed Christ as their head until Jesus gave up his own life in saving us. Husband, you first have to understand that God intends that you be your wife's head, to give up your own life for her, to save her. But you're not to be just any kind of a savior head, for a husband is the head of his wife as Christ is the head of the church. Now at this point, it does not matter what your wife thinks about you. No one ever thought of Jesus as their Savior, much less their head, until after he sacrificed his life for us. If you want your wife to see you as her head, there is something that you too are going to have to do. So husbands, here's the first thing: to live with your wife like a Savior. A Savior does not wait for the other person to love them first. A Savior head takes the initiative, even as our Savior took initiative towards us. For the Son of Man came to seek and save, Luke 19:10. As head, he took initiative. He came to us. He sought us out. In fact, we only love him because of what he first did for us. We love him because he first loved us, 1 John 4:19. Husband, if you are head, function as head. Take the initiative as Christ did. Lead in self-sacrificial love. Lead in laying down your life for your wife just as Christ did for you. Lead in love, lead in serving, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to what? To serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Lead in pleasing your wife, for even Christ did not live to please himself. These are all the ways that leadership is defined, like Jesus saving us. Men, this is leadership. This is what being head is all about. This is being like Christ. Out-lead your wife in serving her, in caring for her, in pleasing her. This is what our Savior does for us. And this is what a real husband, Savior, does with his wife. This is how Christ conquered us. This is how Christ has conquered for himself millions of rebellious people who were against him. This was the powerful weapon that he used to conquer the world, his love for us. This is your first clue on how any husband can conquer a disrespectful or unresponsive wife. This is the only way you can. This kind of headship leadership is the greatest power in the world. This is an irresistible force that conquers and wins any heart. Husband, in a word, this action alone exhibits true love. All other love is only self-serving love. It is not love at all. So this is the SSL, self-sacrificial love. So I'm going to write that in. So this is the SSL secret, the self-serving love. Self-sacrificial. Self-sacrificial, right? S-A-C-R-I-F-I. I'm not spelling that right. Well, here's the way you do it, man. Just like that. Okay. So that's it. Good. You shouldn't forget that. This is the SSL secret, the self-sacrificial love. And that's just the example. That is what conquered every rebellious person. And so, if your wife looks to you as a head, she'll just respect you all the more. It's the same principle as Christ with the church, and that's if you look at that verse again, that's exactly what he says is the example. He is the Savior of his body, the church. That's the second part of the verse. For the husband is the head of his wife, as Christ is the head of the church, the Savior of his body, the church. And I've seen many wives that never changed for years until the husband really laid their lives down in leadership. We'll go into the details in leadership more and what that means. It's not a love that sometimes a wife may think, or even a husband may think, but it's a love like Christ loves. And we'll go into greater detail that in the other chapters. Okay. That's it.